Switch going. Good. So welcome everybody. It's great to have you here. I'm Fletcher Harper with Green Faith, and we are very fortunate to have with us Carrie Kaiser from Interfaith Power and Light, and Estrella Sainberg from Green Faith, and myself, and also you all. And we're going to hear from you all. We've got a manageable enough number of you that I think we're going to hear from you all. So our agenda for tonight is we want to give an update on the number of vigils and just a little bit of an overview of some locations. We're going to try unmuting the lines because we know that there are several of you here on the call who are organizing vigils, and we want to hear from you all and share some have some stories shared. Kari and Estrella will talk a little bit about the resources that Interfaith Power and Light and Green Faith have made available. We'll talk about a little bit about messaging and communications. It's as we all know, it's a little bit of an understatement to say that this is a complicated sort of cultural, moral, political moment. And there have been some really good questions that have emerged about how, as people of faith, we want to be managing and thinking about the messaging and communication that we do around these vigils. So we're going to say a little bit about that and have time for questions and then time for next steps. But why don't we, Kari, why don't you introduce yourself so that everybody knows who you are, and then Estrella, you do the same so everybody knows us right from the start.
Oh, great. Well, it's very nice to see so many people on the call. I am working here at Interfaith Power and Light. I work on our national programs, and I work on our community engagement. And it's been great to work with Green Faith on these vigils.
Awesome. Go for it, Estrella.
Hi, everyone. My name is Estrella, and I'm based in New Jersey. I work with Green Faith as an organizer and have been supporting the vigil organizing across the country over the past couple months.
Great. And why don't we, Estrella, sort of keeping going with you for a moment, give us an update in terms of where do things seem to be at this point in terms of the approximate number of vigils that we know that there are vigils out there that are happening that we haven't heard about or gotten sort of formally registered. But why don't you give everybody a little bit of an update, and then Kari, you can fill in any blanks that, because you may have heard of some that Estrella hasn't.
Yeah, great. So there are vigils being organized all the way from Hawaii to Connecticut and beyond. It's really exciting. There's been a lot of creativity with these vigils, such as having a vigil on the Brooklyn Bridge, to having one that extends over the course of 3 days in a house of worship, to having one at a local pond. That means a lot to the city. And at this moment, we have 14 vigils confirmed in our database, but there's so many more that I've heard about that aren't in there yet. And Carrie, I think you know about more as well. And so there is a form that we're asking vigil organizers to fill out just so that we can let everybody know across the country what the confirmed vigils are. And we're excited to see this list grow, and we'll be able to share that with you really soon.
And by really soon, I think we're hoping like tomorrow, right, Estrella, that we'd be able to get it up online?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can go and just know that it'll be automatically updated as people continue to submit the form. It's a Google spreadsheet via a Google form. So you can continue to look that up to see if there's a vigil near you.
Great. Kari, any anecdotes or updates you've heard in addition to what Estrella just said?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're similar. We have the same kind of outreach going on, the same spreadsheet, but we're putting it out to our network so we can have a wide swath of reach. And we have, and I haven't told Australia yet, but we've got 9 more of those vigils that aren't on your spreadsheet yet. So, and we'll add those to it, combine that so that we'll have one list for everyone to be able to go to and see what's going on locally. And so we're very excited. We do have a lot more of interest, but we're just waiting to see what kind of pans out across the nation.
That's great. So what I'm doing now, and this is without too much forewarning, but this is a relatively new webinar system that we're using, so we're still learning exactly how it works. But Dan Weber, our good friend and colleague in Milwaukee, has been deeply involved in the organizing of a cluster of vigils that are happening in the greater Milwaukee area. And Dan, I think I've got you unmuted. Would you be game? Do you mind if I put you on the spot and ask you if you'd share just a little bit about some of the organizing that's been going on that you've been involved in? Let's see, Dan, are you able to? Let's see. All right, I'll try, what I'll do is I'll try with one other and see if we can get this to work. Let's see. All right, so we'll try. Shelley, are you there?
I am.
I've just promoted you to panelist, which seems to be the way to make it possible for people to speak. And we know you've been involved. Would you be game for saying a little bit about? I know you've been doing some organizing with Quaker Earth Care Witness around this. Maybe could sort of put you on the spot, but would you give everybody just a quick update of what you've been up to?
Sure. I'm Shelley Tannen. I'm the General Secretary for Quaker Earth Care Witness. We're a national network of Quakers working on environmental concerns. And I'm actually joining this to find out what's going on. And I'm happy to spread the information through our network about the vigils. I'm actually most interested in hearing a little more about organizing for the march in April. And I don't know if that's planning on that has started yet, or that's my question is how to get connected about that. Great.
Well, we'll touch on that a little bit at the end and get into that more. I've just Peter Sawtell, who is I think one of the longest tenured religious environmental leaders in the world at this point. He's been doing this for since I was in diapers, I think. And Peter, you there, and I know you've got some organizing work that you've done in Denver. Give everybody an update on what you've been doing and sort of how you've approached it so that folks can learn from what you've done.
Well, first of all, Fletcher, I'm intrigued that you were wearing diapers 20 years ago. Most people get out of them sooner than that. Yeah, Eco Justice Ministries is based in Denver, and we've been involved in organizing climate events at least since 2007. And so we have some experience with these. On this particular event, when word came out in late December about the series, we checked with some of our interfaith and ecumenical colleagues, and they said with all of the other stuff that's going on coming up around the inauguration and confirmation hearings and all of that, there was a limited ability to do major organizing around this. So our coalition said we're going to do something on the lighter side, not quite as broadly organized as some of our other events. So on Sunday afternoon, we are holding a multi-faith vigil for climate justice, and co-sponsoring that with Colorado Interfaith Power and Light, our very good colleagues, and having about a 1-hour gathering indoors in January in Colorado. That seemed like a reasonable choice. So it will be a time to draw on multiple faith traditions. We're expecting Christian, Buddhist, Islamic, and Jewish at least to be a part of that with readings and prayers. I'm trying to set up a system to get a recorded message from a colleague of ours in Tuvalu to remind us of the urgency of what's going on and to personalize that a little bit. And we'll be recording, we believe, video statements from participants that we will send on to our congressional delegation. So there is a political outreach. But we're looking at publicizing this primarily through our interfaith networks that are already in place without a lot of additional publicity work, and hoping for a decent turnout on that Sunday afternoon. Another part of our commitment to doing the event, and I mentioned this to Fletcher another call a while back, is simply that it's important to build the movement and say these events are happening all around the country. So even if it's not a big event, to say that this is one of the 25 or 50 or 100 happening is an important part of the statement nationally and globally. So we are committed to being there and having this event and reinforcing our constituency as we, again, look ahead to a bigger event probably coming up in April with the national movement that day.
That's great. And Peter, you'd also, I think when we'd spoken earlier, you'd mentioned, you know, staying away from the Saturday date, but out of respect and support for the Women's March also. Maybe say just a couple of sentences about that too.
Denver is having a parallel Women's March to the one going on in Washington, D.C. the Saturday after the inauguration. The figures I'm seeing are saying that we're going to have at least 20,000 people marching and rallying that day in Denver. And so that's where a lot of the organizing energy and the effort to get the crowds out is going for the weekend. And we didn't want to get in the way of that. Great.
That's super. And, you know, I think that, well, Dan, I'm eager, and Kate, Dan Weber, are you there? Can you hear us, or can we hear you? No. It's what we'll do is I know I was eager to hear from Dan just because he has in the greater Milwaukee area, there are four or five different vigils that are being planned. And I know Dan, who's very involved with Kanfei Nesharim, which is the Orthodox Jewish Environmental Network, the Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee, and Tom Heinen there, Wisconsin Interfaith Power and Light, and Huda Alkaf. I know that they're all working to the Wisconsin Council of Churches and Peter Bakken. They're all working together. Reverend Dr. Nadia Astudillo, who's a Green Faith Fellow, who's just on the Wisconsin side of the Wisconsin-Illinois border. They're all working together to organize a real sort of nice network of Wisconsin vigils. So, which is just super to see. Why don't we talk for a couple of minutes about some resources that are available. And Estrella, why don't you describe first the resources that are available on the Green Faith site, and I'll pull up a screen share, and then Kara, you can do the same for the Interfaith Power and Light site, and I'll pull up that screen to share, and that way we can give folks a sense of the resources that are available.
All right, so on our, should I go ahead?
Yep, go ahead. You know what? Actually, hang on just a sec, because Dan has Dan texted and said that he might be able to talk now. Or can you, Dan, say something and let's see if we hear you. No, for whatever reason, it's not coming through. Dan, I'm really sorry. I'll talk with you, and we'll get we'll see if we can find a way to work you in on another time. And I should correct what I said a moment ago. The several Wisconsin vigils are across Wisconsin, not all in the greater Milwaukee area. So make a correction in that regard. Okay, so Estrella, go ahead, and I'll pull up the
While you're pulling that up, I can briefly describe the resources available on the website. So on the website, you can find a guide with a suggested process for organizing a vigil, including a checklist for what not to forget the day of, what to make sure you do before the vigil. So just things that maybe might slip our minds, and the week and a half that we have left for organizing something locally. Also on that page are sample prayers and statements from various faiths that you can use and adapt to your location. If you do end up just doing something like offering a prayer in your house of worship, that might be a guide that you look to for a suggested prayer. Also on there is a flyer that you can plug your location, time, and main contact information into for distributing and promoting your vigil. And so there's a vigil in the form of a flyer in the form of a docx that you can save as a PDF or a JPEG, depending on your needs. And on there tonight or tomorrow will be the list of vigils with contact information, description, and vigil details that will be continually updated up until the weekend of.
Great. Well, as I said, we're still in learning mode about how best to make this system work. So we'll send a link to that page where those resources are. Kari, why don't you give us an overview of what is on the IPL site, and we'll send a similar link out to that.
Yeah, great. Well, since Green Faith has done a lot of great work, we didn't want to do the same thing. But what we did do is we were thinking through like how, when people are getting energized and getting hopeful at the vigils, what kind of action can they take when they're standing there at the event? And one thing we did is we created a sheet that you could print out, a PDF that you could print out double-sided, that would have a prayer on one side and an action that they could take. And what the suggested action that we had was a phone call that they could make to their senators, or they could tweet. Since tweeting these days seems to be the way to reach out to our new administration, we thought we'd give that one a try. And so what we did on the website is we have that in a printable form, easy for you to print out. We also have the action in a editable form. So if you wanted to do a different prayer, if you wanted to use that in a different way, you could take that information and edit it for the materials that you need. And so we have that up there, and hopefully that would inspire the people who are at your event to do some actions while they're there.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks. And we'll send the links to both the IPL page and the Green Faith page. And I'll also track down, I believe that the Franciscan Action Network and Patrick Carolyn were developing some Catholic specific resources also. And so we'll track those down and send out the link to those as well. I think one of the things that we thought it would be good to talk about for a couple of minutes was the question of messaging and communications. And the sort of backdrop to that is obviously we're in a unique kind of moment, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, where there's a confluence of moral, religious, cultural, and political concerns all coming together around what many people on all sides of the cultural and political spectrum are viewing as a really unique kind of moment. And in that, it poses interesting challenges for religious and spiritual and moral communities about how to communicate during a vigil around a time such as this. We've referenced on a number of occasions that these vigils are part of the People's Climate Movement, which is a multi-sector coalition of labor and environmental and social justice and racial justice and student and faith groups. And the People's Climate Movement website, which a number of people have understandably checked out as they've been thinking about these vigils, does not utilize religious language because religions are just one part of that coalition. there've been some concerns raised, very understandably, about the fairly political language that's on the People's Climate Movement website. The language there is in the process of getting evaluated from a number of different perspectives. I am sharing the concerns that we've heard from faith communities that the language appears to be quite partisan politically, and that does not work for a lot of faith communities. At the same time, we also want to be mindful that there are very particular concerns related to the incoming administration, a number of its nominees for high office, and the public statements that those nominees and that representatives of the new administration, including the president-elect, have made about climate change. What we're encouraging each vigil to do is to find the language that represents what they believe to be a faithful representation of how they want to address these issues. We will be sharing tomorrow some sample messages that we've developed that are very specifically faith-based and faith-oriented, that address issues such as the importance of addressing climate change because of the enormous threats that it poses to human and ecological well-being, the opportunity for creating jobs that can help rebuild a middle class and help lift people from poverty, the fact that those who suffer the worst impacts of climate change are communities that are poor, communities of color, low-income communities, and that all faith communities, regardless of their faith or theology, hold that concern for those who are most vulnerable, those communities and individuals that are most vulnerable, close to the heart of their belief system. So we'll share those sample messages, and I'll have a blog going up on the Huffington Post within the next several days, giving voice to those concerns in one particular kind of way. We encourage folks to use all of the spiritual and religious messages and tools and resources that you have at your disposal. Some folks have asked about, does it make sense to ring church bells or to sound a shofar as a sign both of raising awareness and of warning? And of expressing our concern for the earth. And my sense is absolutely, if that's something that the group that's come together to organize your vigil feels called to do, feels inclined towards, absolutely go for it. People have asked questions about what kinds of messages or slogans should they put on signs that might get photographed at their vigils. Should they have passages from sacred scriptures? Should they have environmental messages? Should they have political messages? We tend to suggest to folks that you stick with the moral messages and the quotations from sacred texts or the applications of those to climate and environmental concerns. But again, that's something, we know that at a number of the vigils there will be secular partners, environmental justice partners who are there. And so it may well be that there are a diversity of messages that get lifted up. So as I said, we'll send some of that, some suggested messaging around. Again, without wanting to put him too much on the spot, but Peter, I'm wondering, I know you've written extensively recently and over the years about this. There are a couple of issues of your eco-justice ministry writings that you'd like to send to us. We could send those out to folks, and they might find some good resources there. Anything that you'd want to add to what I've said?
I think for the occasion of these rallies and vigils, keeping the message very tightly pointed is important. Not to try and cover all of the issues about climate change and climate justice, but to have one core message. Yesterday, I was at one of the rallies that 350.org held at our senator's offices, and my basic message at those was, in Christianity and virtually every other faith tradition, there's an affirmation of telling the truth, including truth about the reality of climate change, and caring for the earth. And so we were gathering to say we are looking for nominees to the cabinet who will tell the truth and care for the earth, and we're not seeing that. That was fairly short and concise and memorable without going into a long theological discussion. And so if you can find speakers or resources that keep it well pointed, you may have a bigger impact on your participants and the broader audience. But Fletcher, I will look at some of the recent writings and try and pull out some excerpts from those and send them along to you.
That would be great, because I think it's useful to be able to share a variety of messages. We'll also send a link. We Green Faith did a study with Climate Outreach, which it's a climate change communications consultancy based in Oxford in the UK, and we did a study last year through which we had focus groups with Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist people, not clergy, but people, all of whom were recent immigrants to the UK. The interviews took place in Oxford and in London because we wanted to get as globally representative a sample of people as possible. And the George Marshall, who's the climate change communications researcher at Climate Outreach, did a really wonderful job, I think, of suggesting some narratives and some messages that appeared to him to work across a very wide range of religious and moral traditions, and that had a very genuinely religious and moral feel to them. So we'll share a link to that also. There are I should mention also, and I feel badly mentioning him so many times while we still can't figure out how to get his voice, but Dan Weber just finished a really wonderful research study that he did about how to communicate within the Orthodox Jewish community about climate change. And we'll send a link out to that. That's on the Kanfei Nasharim site. So again, and even if you're not Orthodox Jewish, there are some really nicely done tips in there about how to do it. So Dan, hats off to you, and we'll share that. But I think that if folks have, we feel, Green Faith feels that it's important to stay connected with the People's Climate Movement, because it does represent that broader multi-sector coalition. At the same point in time, we know that the more pointed partisan and political tone of some of the messages on the PCM website right now are really not viable messages for folks in a number of communities, and that's absolutely fine. I mean, there's a very clear understanding that that the core that we're all committed to is addressing climate change, climate justice, with a real accompanying commitment to racial and economic justice as interconnected with all of those. So if you've got any questions or comments about that, feel free to use the chat function to send in, and we'll do our best to respond. But many thanks to folks who shared their questions and comments about that, because it's good to it's been good to have a number of people and a number of perspectives on that. So why don't I see if Kari or Estrella, any closing thoughts from either of you? I think we're at the bottom of the hour, and I think we're close to wrapping up. But Kari, why don't we start with you? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that one of the wonderful things about having these vigils and having the faith communities come together with a unified voice is that we're really starting this new administration off with that commitment that we're passionate about climate change. We're going to do something about climate change, and these are the people who are talking about it. So I think this is an amazing start to a new administration. But just I'm excited. I think what we'll be doing is talking a little bit more about tips on how you can talk about and how you can tell your story of what is happening at the vigil, what is happening, what the people believe in, and get that out to your political leaders, because I think that's going to be a very vital piece in the next 4 years, and how we as a faith community are going to make a difference, and how we're going to be holding our lawmakers accountable to protecting the health and the welfare of our communities. So this is great.
That's great. And Estrella, I'll go to you in just a sec. I apologize for not knowing everybody who's on the call, but just wanted to do a couple of shout outs. Brother Kevin Cawley, who's an Edmund Rice Christian brother, is on the call. And Kevin has a wonderful sort of group that he's started called the Carbon Rangers within the Edmund Rice Christian Brothers, and does a really super regular newsletter on that. And Bob Kolodny, who's with the Buddhist Climate Action Network and who's been a very active Buddhist climate change leader, is also on. And we know that there's good organizing going on in the Buddhist community on this. Estrella, how about any say a couple of words, Estrella, about the social media piece of the picture before we start to wrap up.
We really want to see these vigils on social media. That'll be I know I personally want to hear about all the vigils, and it's just really important that these moments connect with actions going on for the entire People's Climate Movement during the first 100 hours. So we're going to be using the same hashtag that the People's Climate Movement does, and we'll get that to you all on the email that we send out or in the next few days. So basically, if you have a picture and there's an action going on that's not a vigil somewhere else, we want those to be able to come together on the same screen and to be able to look at this at the same time and say, wow, these happened on the same weekend, and these happened with the same goal in mind of protecting and stewarding our earth.
Great. Thanks, Estrella. Peter, another thought on messaging, and any other thoughts to share?
Just reflecting on what I said earlier, I want to clarify a piece of our goal for our vigil is to talk to the politicians, definitely. But we're also doing this to re-energize and refocus our own constituency, to have the people who are coming to the vigil being part of our target, and also the congregations and faith communities that we're coming from. So we'll be speaking back out to those faith communities to say, we're gathering as an interfaith movement, and we'll keep talking to you and inviting you to be a part of this. So we're really pointing to the politicians, to the participants, and to the faith communities.
Great, that's fantastic. Just a couple of, there's been one question that's come in through the chat about is anybody organizing a virtual vigil, and we're planning to do that at Green Faith, and as soon as we get the plans in place, we'll send out information about that. And another question came in about does having a phone vigil from 12:30 on Inauguration Day seem like a conflict with the DC ceremonies, or as a supportive prayer? And my feeling is go for it. I think that the more activity that goes on, the better. As Peter has said, it's about building a movement and getting our movement muscles working together. Yeah, there you go. And so I think that's good. And we're working on getting the website stuff more and more up to speed. There should be some good progress on the People's Climate Movement site over the next couple of days, because there just literally been a couple of new organizers who've come on board there this week. Estrella and Deb Convery in our office have been working hard on keeping the Green Faith site up to speed, and I know folks at Interfaith Power and Light have been working on that also. So anyway, I think we've gone through all of the questions. We've had a number of last words from different folks, so we'll send out the recording link. Oh, hang on a second. So one other last minute chat come in. Let's see if there's it's a note saying thanks for emphasizing that no action is too small. I think that Mr. Peter Blood, who's sent in a couple of messages, I think that's right on target. My feeling is that a vigil of one is a meaningful vigil with this. We are all in this together. We're connected, and our prayers matter. So thanks very much, everybody. This has been a slightly catch as catch can, slightly haphazard technologically vigil, but we really appreciate, Peter, thanks to you for being willing to take on such a big role with zero advance notice and with lots of teasing in the lead up to having you speak. It's great to be together with everybody. God bless us and God bless the earth. And we'll have another conference call next week. We'll send out a reminder email about that. Kari, thanks a million. Great to be working with Interfaith Power and Light and Eco Justice Ministries and Buddhist Climate Action Network and the Carbon Rangers and all of us and many, many more. So take care, everybody, and have a good night, and we'll be in touch again soon. Bye-bye now.